We got some new spy photos of the upcoming M3 EV, and to me it looks like it has the exact same problem when it comes to the rear quarter fenders that we have on the current M3 and the M5 as well. To me it feels like BMW is cheap, being a little cheap here when it comes to this integration. We're going to talk about this and show you exactly what it is I'm talking about in Photoshop in a minute, but before we do that, let's just check out some of these spy photos that we have from this article from CarScoop. So these fat fenders tell you everything about this M Cars mission. You can see the wide fenders here, specifically in the rear end. We also have wider fenders in the front end. Neue Klasse front face, of course. I think it's going to be a pretty good looking machine, and the proportions are completely, I didn't know this, but I just realized from this article that the proportions of the internal combustion engine 3 Series is completely different from the M3 EV. I honestly thought they were going to be the same. I'm not sure if the M3 EV, though, and the internal combustion engine M3 is going to have the same sort of proportions, or if, I don't know, we're going to have to wait and see. So, prototypes of the first ever electric M3 strips away the disguise to reveal its wide track bodywork. The prototype dropped the previous riveted arches for real one-piece fenders. A quad-motor drivetrain should deliver 700 plus horsepower and torque vectoring capability. It will be available in both, as we said, internal combustion engine or as an EV, probably named iM3. Pretty weird, following recent BMW trademark wearing its fat production fenders. Although we've seen electric M3 before test cars, they've always been fitted with these riveted arch extensions or fender graphics that makes it hard to see what is exactly going on with the surfacing in this area. But now we can clearly see what the fenders will look like, and they will add 3 inches of width compared to a stock i330 sedan. It also sits a little lower, giving it a meaner look, and those new swollen fenders are huge, meaning the charging flap, as you can see right here, sit in almost a 45-degree angle because of the wide fenders that we have in this area right here. So there's a lack of tailpipe, of course, this being the electric version. You can also see that with the proportions. So the electric version of the Neue Klasse 3 Series, including the M3, have a much shorter gap between the front doors and the front wheel while opening, a more sloping windshield, and a forward-angled window post in the middle of the rear door. So this is exactly the EV proportions that we've been talking about here on the channel a lot, and how it it just looks a little bubbly to me, and that's probably going to happen with the M3 as well. So here we can see some photos, and this is the area that it looks exactly to be the same type of vibe that we have on specifically the M3, but we also have it on the M5, where you have this wide fender going into the door very sharply. It doesn't have this smooth transition going into the door because they take the door from the regular EV 3 Series and save money that way because they don't have to re-engineer the door. And that makes it feel, to me, it just feels like it's just a cheap solution for this. I could be wrong, but you still have a lot of camo here, so we can't really tell what's going on here. But it definitely looks to be the same abrupt cut like we have in the M3 and the M5 as well. However, if you look at it from a straight rear view, check out the plantedness here with these big fenders, fat tires in the back, and here we have an even better view of the straight rear view. It's definitely going to have a planted look to it, I'm sure about that. I also like the Neue Klasse graphics that we've talked about here, because we have the 2 key elements, the kidneys in the middle, the 2 main headlight units right here, elements, and also opening in the lower section for the cooling of the battery. And here again, you can see the charging port just sitting on top of this massive fender that we have here. Here we can maybe see a little more clear the cut line that I'm talking about, how the door just slams into the wider fender in the rear end. You can see the infotainment screen, or the iDrive Pano, looks to be incorporated here, which is very, very sad to see. So it won't be launched for another 18 months. You can see a glimpse of the interior showing the panoramic iDrive centrally mounted tablet touchscreen and full width head-up display at the base of the windshield that we saw from BMW at CES in 2025. Will have 4 electric motors delivering just over 700 horsepower as standard, and the ICE version will get a mild hybrid 6-cylinder, which sounds pretty good to me. At least it's not a four-cylinder like we got in the C63, for example. Now, I want to show you this, the problem I have with these vehicles today, the M3 and the M5 as well. And that has all to do with this area right here. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but I want to show you this because as I said, I just realized this, that we actually have different proportions depending on what 3 Series you have. If you have the internal combustion engine version or the EV, you can clearly see the difference here. We have a much shorter hood in the EV version. It feels a little stubbier because the A-pillar stretches very far forward here, and these are the old fenders that we talked about in the article, having this riveted design to, and so we can't really see what's going on with the styling here, but the proportions still look decent to me. They don't look bad, but now when I compare this, here's the newest spy photos we have of the EV M3, and now that I compare it to the regular internal combustion engine 3 Series, this is a perfect example of why I think internal combustion engine proportions just generally is much cleaner looking and much more elegant. Because look at the greenhouse here. We have a better, a more raked windshield on the EVs. It's almost, I don't know what degree this is, but it's very flat in the front end and it stretches all the way down to this point. If we take the A-pillar, or the door line right here, cutting down here, you can see that the door line on the internal combustion engine sits way further back, meaning that we do have a longer hood and also a more upright windshield, and these are the 3-box proportions that I want to see in a sedan. It becomes a little less 3-boxy when you have the EV variant right here. As you can see, with this very stubby front end, short hood in the front, we have a much longer hood in the internal combustion engine. It looks a lot better proportionally. Now, looking at the rear quarter here and the integration of the fender, you can see this is the cut line I'm talking about. You can barely see it here because of all the camo, but you can still see that this door is a regular door from the upcoming 3 Series EV. They took the same door, but the rear fender is definitely not the same as the 3 Series, and that means that we have a huge clash between this big volume here, this wider fender going into the door, creating this very sharp cut line right there that they do on every single BMW M product, I mean the M3 and M5 at least today, and it looks like we're going to have the same sort of styling in the new M3 EV as well. The greenhouse on the new 3 Series, I mean, the proportions overall, I don't like this vertical line for the Hofmeister kink. Definitely want to have an angle on this because this looks very strange to have it just a straight upright line there. But looking at the M3 Touring, the M3 and the M5, and here you can clearly see what it is I'm talking about. Here we have the same door from the regular 3 Series Touring, I do believe it is, and then we have this wider fender. You can see the reflections. The reflections do not want to cooperate with this either because it goes straight in, crashes right into this wider fender. Instead of creating or re-engineering a brand new door, which is of course going to cost a little bit more money, but that would look so much better to have a much fluid integration here. And every time I see an M3 or an M5 today, I cannot help but just stare at this area right here. You can see the same, even better here at the green one, how the door just clashes in and creating this very tense area right in front of the rear axle. It just does not feel harmonious at all to me, and it looks very strange. I think once you see it, it's very hard to unsee. They did the exact same thing, unfortunately, with the M5. You see the door here, pretty flat, going right into this massive wide rear fender that we have for the M5. You can see just how static everything looks. We have this line here and then a straight line, very sharp corner right here in the lower section. And this would look so much better if you just can smooth out this transition, just like I talked about with the 3 Series. But overall, the biggest news here for me is the differences in proportions of the internal combustion engine version and the EV version. I think again, the Neue Klasse is going to be, I think it's going to be a success for BMW, specifically when you have this beautiful three-box design for the internal combustion engine, at least proportions for the sedan. So I'm looking forward to see what it eventually, pretty soon, hopefully, we're going to see exactly what the production versions of these are going to look like.